Welcome to Pure Hustle Podcast. I'm Mike.
And this is Orlando, and we're on episode 443, and this is a themed episode.
That's right. So if you are new to Pure Hustle Podcast, kind of our routine is every other Wednesday or sometimes Thursday, usually Wednesdays, we have a long form podcast that drops. 1 week we do update episodes where we go over the current news in reselling. We go over what's going on in our life reselling wise. And then the following week is a week like this where we talk about a specific aspect of reselling. Could be shipping, could be taxes, could be any number of things. And so these are our themed episodes. We really enjoy these. And these also include our famous hustles of the week, where we get to share our hustles, things that have been going good for us reselling, and then some of the major hustles that our listeners have submitted. So this is going to be an amazing episode. What are we talking about today, Orlando?
So today we're going to talk about how eBay, I believe, is the most flexible side hustle, right? There's a lot of side hustles out there, but some of them, they require certain parameters, or they're pretty strict on how to do it. And, you know, if you're new and you're like, I don't know, I've been thinking about reselling, but I'm not sure. Or if you're, experienced reseller and you're like, hey, I want to listen to an episode that kind of talks to me about, why I enjoy reselling. This is the episode for you. Just because there's, kind of out there this belief like, I see it all the time now, and I'm just tired of seeing it. I don't know why, but it's like reselling is doomed. This is the end. I'm quitting reselling. YouTubers leaving en masse. All this stuff about resellers that are on YouTube and social media. And I want to tell people, like, the only reason reselling should end is if, you end up buying a crypto coin that goes 1,000x and you're set for life. Like, outside of that.
Yeah, you win the lottery or something. There's a lot you can do with reselling. Yeah. Because it's such a great piece to make money. Yeah, and kind of going back with this, like, kind of the theme of this episode of reselling being a very flexible thing. I was just talking to some coworkers today at work, and we were laughing about a text message one of them received regarding, a job opportunity, and it basically was like a scam text message, but it had that sales pitch of like, you can make, with just X amount of time a day, you can make anywhere from $100 to $500 in this period of time. Most people are making $10,000 a month, right? And essentially, they're trying to hire you to be some kind of a salesperson. And the reality is, like, if you get into, like, if you wanted to be a commissioned work only person, we've seen all the YouTubes, we've seen the TikToks, there is a lot of money that potentially could be made if you go down that sales avenue. But that's a kind of grind that you have to sell your soul to. Like, there are people who are working, basically 20-hour days, and they're still not even getting close to being elite enough where they're making it happen. Like, that is, and it's always put out there as if, like, this is the thing. And there's so many different side hustles that are like that, where people kind of get, or not even just side hustles, but just hustles in general, is sold as this, like, end all be all. It's going to make you a millionaire. And the reality is, I've seen them, I've done the research, and reselling is one of those few things that's tried and true. We've never sugarcoated it on our podcast that it's going to be easy. It is a hustle, but it is one of the most flexible hustles that you can possibly have. And one of the things that really makes it shine is the fact that you really have no set schedule. Now, as you scale and as you grow as a reseller, you may have more of a scheduled type, policy that you're running off of. If you've got a warehouse going and you've got employees and things like that, the schedule could kind of increase. But for the average reseller, you can decide, hey, I'm, Wednesdays and Thursdays are the days I have the most amount of time available. And so that's when I'm going to do most of my sourcing and listing. Or, this week is a little bit hectic and I'm going to kind of scale back a little bit, but next week I'm going to scale up. And there's not a lot of things that you can have that type of flexibility. The only other kind of job that I can think of off the top of my head that has that kind of no set schedule that people use as a hustle are things like the Uber Eats or the, just driving Uber, or maybe Amazon deliveries. When you're doing those things, though, I feel like there's so much of a grind and so little return for most people. And you really are, as a reseller, there's the schedule. If you're going to go to garage sales, like, okay, Fridays and Saturdays are probably going to be a busy day for you. But, people I know who do Uber Eats, they're almost locked into a schedule as far as these are the hours where it's most popular. And if I'm not available during these hours, I'm losing money. So even though it seems to be other hustles that might be not as schedule focused, I really think reselling is the one where you can say, hey, I'm up at 3 a.m. I'm going to get some listings done. Or I'm going to do this while I'm pumping gas. I'm going to get a listing posted. It really is super flexible in that sense.
Well, like you said, right? I'm going to get up at 3 a.m. Some people will be like, I'm going to be up until 3 a.m. doing eBay work. Some people will say, I'm going to get up at 3 a.m. and do eBay work, right? So it works for the night owls and the early birds. It works for both groups. And I will say I really enjoyed that. You know, I'm not full-time right now, but when I was full-time, like all I ever did was reselling. Like I would start work probably like at midnight. I'll never forget like hanging out with Sell Quick, Ship Quick. And we would go sourcing, you know, super late, and we'd start listing stuff like at 12 in the morning, and we wouldn't be done till like 2 or 3 in the morning. And reselling kind of it does. It gives you that time, right? There's no pressure. There's no shifts. There's no boss to report to. There's no, I have to get up at 6 in the morning and report to work at 7. Now, if you have a real job, you obviously have to do that. But even if you're part-time, right, you can kind of set your own time based on your work schedule, right? What works for you. You might go, hey, you know what? I can't really source at night, but I can source on my lunch break, or I can list on my other break. Like there's so much flexibility where a lot of, like you said, like even Uber Eats and even some of the other side hustles, right? There's only certain times you can do those things. Where reselling, you can choose the time you want to. Now, the other item here is the idea of you can source on your own terms, meaning, yes, you do need to sell through rate, right? You need to sell items that sell pretty quick. You need to sell great profit, but you can choose what you sell, right? So if you're into books, you can sell books. If you really know board games, you can go after board games and collectibles. If you're all about, you know, collecting cards, whether it be Pokemon or basketball or baseball, maybe you're into vintage clothing, vintage shoes. The reality is you can choose what you want to source, and then you can scale that based on your knowledge, right? So there's a lot of people in the reselling space. You can find whatever YouTube you want, right? If you want to catch the person that just sells collectibles and learn from them, you can do that. If you want to follow Crazy Lamp Lady and all the, you know, fragile items she likes to sell, you can do that. If you want to go after, you know, people that sell books, there's plenty out there. So I really love the flexibility of reselling. It's not like you have to sell one product. It's not like you have to sell a certain amount of products. It all depends on kind of what your taste is. And even if you're full time, like there's plenty of people that have found that, hey, they just sell shoes, right? And they really love shoes. They find that it's easy to source. They find that they don't really struggle with having to clean it, and they're able to make not even a decent living. They can make a really good living. There's some resellers out there making a killing, all kinds of money, but they decided what they wanted to sell. So inventory is not an issue if you're trying to resell.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge. I mean, you think about the fact that, I mean, so many people say things, and I disagree with it in a lot of ways of, you know, you've got to do just what you love, and you've got to find fulfillment in your work. And as I've gotten older, and I've kind of recognized like my responsibility in life is taking care of my family and providing for them. And so I get fulfillment from doing that. And so it almost doesn't matter what I'm doing. If I'm successful financially doing it, then I'm being fulfilled. However, reselling gives you that some flexibility where you can say, you know what, I'm going to sell things that I want to sell. Now, maybe, I mean, a lot of things I sell I could care less about. Or I should say I couldn't care less about. There's a lot of things that's like, hey, I found this is profitable, whatever. But it does open up the opportunity that I can look in fields that I enjoy. And so things that would typically become like a hobby, you know, whether it's, grilling stuff, or whether it's board games, or whether it's vintage electronics or video games, things that people would get into as a hobby, you could, as reselling, make the hobby pay for itself and actually make money doing it. That freedom of inventory just adds icing to the cake, right? Like I'd be happy if I was reselling widgets that I didn't care about, if it was making me a ton of money. But the fact that you have complete control over, you know what, this is the niche I want to learn about. I want to learn about ham radio. You know, I've gotten into that and various things. Yeah. There's so much freedom there that you get that icing on the cake where, hey, maybe this isn't like the most fulfilling. Like I go to work and I love every second of what I resell, but you get more of that in reselling than you can in other fields for sure. The next topic here, really is, and I kind of mentioned this with the idea of like you could list while you're pumping your gas. You could really do a lot of reselling things from pretty much anywhere. There are certain things you're kind of bound to locations. You've got to ship, you've got to get to your storage unit, you got to be out in your garage, you got to be where your shipping supplies are. Same thing with listing. You probably need to have a designated area. We have full episodes talking about how to organize those areas, those workspaces for listing, for shipping. So those things are important, but there are things you can do besides just taking the pictures. You can take pictures and make drafts. In fact, I've moved into a method where when I'm sourcing an item, I make the draft right then because I've already looked up the price. So I'll do a sell similar, save it as a draft. All I have to do then is add my pictures. And if I spend one day where it's like, hey, Wednesdays are my picture days because I've got an extra like 45 minutes after the kids go to bed, I'm going to take enough pictures that I can finish these drafts up at any point throughout the week. Hey, I've got a 15-minute break at work. I'm going to pound out 2 of these drafts, make sure all the stuff is right. I know my pricing on it's good because I've already kind of put that in. So you can, as even a part-time reseller, you have so much flexibility to be reselling, accepting offers, sending offers, all those things, even if you're not tied down to a computer at your workstation. It's you could be watching. I mean, heck, you talk about it. You watch a lot of TV shows in the background, like you binge whole series while you're listening and taking pictures and those things. So there's not many jobs where you can do that and be efficient, right? Like a lot of times people think they're efficient when they're multitasking, but you really can do some brainless listing while you're listening to a podcast. Hopefully Pure Hustle podcast, and doing some other things and have those in the background and list at the same time.
Yeah, and I would argue you could take it on the road if you want. I've done it before, right? There are some people that actually have like a little trailer that they attach to their car and they just travel the country, right? And they have everything set up. Maybe they have Starlink for their internet and they end up, packing and shipping from where they're at. Like there is a possibility if you do retail arbitrage, you can definitely do that. I would say, we're talking about eBay, but with Amazon, you could actually travel the entire country and do FBA the entire time. I mean, there was a time I was doing that with hair clippers or with other items where I flew into a state. I found all the inventory I wanted. I bought it. I shipped it out to Amazon warehouse and I went back home and ended up shipping while I was at home. So there's various avenues. There's not many things. I mean, there's some remote work now that you can technically do, but I would say as a hustle, like as a side hustle, something that is not your primary, like you can definitely do a lot with reselling because you can list anywhere, especially with technology now. I mean, it's very rare for you not to find a place where you can find a good Wi-Fi. Very, very rare with, Photo Room and the apps, that, even the eBay app that you can remove the background so you can take a picture anywhere. I mean, there's so many options reselling.
Yeah, technology has really opened up the door. I mean, there used to be a time when you had to have a DSLR and remove the memory card and plug the memory card in. Or before that, remember you had to I was too young to have to do this for eBay, but I'm sure there were times where like you had to print pictures and maybe not fax them, but like scan them into the computer, right? So like those days are gone. Like now you can just on your phone, not only take a picture, you're not tied down. So like in the same way that your phone has replaced that like DSLR or fancy camera, now all these apps that can remove backgrounds have replaced a lot of the need for very expensive photo booths set up in your house. Can those still be helpful to get the right lighting and angles? Sure. But if you've got a decent enough travel setup, I mean, with just a blank piece of canvas that you could use as a backdrop and some decent outdoor lighting, you can get pictures in your trunk. No problem. And remove background using a variety of apps, including the eBay app, and you're good to go.
No, I agree. I would say the background removal has been one of the biggest game changers. Because I've actually gone traveling and I'll buy source stuff at a thrift store. And I'm like, let's say I'm staying at a hotel. All I do is just, make sure the lighting's okay. And even with the lighting, you can still, like, with the iPhones, like, your lighting can be, like, okay. And you can still get pretty bright light. And you just do the background removal and you're good to go. So,
yeah, I mean, I feel like I lost some of my competitive edge when that became more mainstream. Because remember, there was a time when I was using remove.bg.
Oh, my goodness.
And I was one of the few people doing that at the time. And, man, I had the best thumbnails. in the niches I was selling in. I mean, there's like high quality resellers that would have better ones for sure, but just the average reseller, I was head and shoulders above because I had these perfect infinite white backgrounds that look like they're professionally shot because I was using a website, and now you can do that on your phone so much quicker with various apps. So yeah, it is definitely a new world.
It's so wild. So, hey, before we move on, I do want to talk about a great tool as tax time is around the corner. It's called My Reseller Genie. Now, in case you didn't know, we are announcing winners for February and for March in the first week of April. I keep pushing it back, but we're just going to announce both. All you have to do to answer is leave a comment. And if you leave a comment, you will get 1 free month of My Reseller Genie. And so we'll pick that winner in the first week of April. We'll pick a winner for February and for March. But if you're like, hey, I want to get started now, I want to make sure all my taxes are good to go, you can go to My Reseller Genie and use our code Pure Hustle. And with that code Pure Hustle, you'll get 15% off the first month. That's 15% off the first month. In case you're wondering, what is My Reseller Genie? It is software by resellers for resellers that allows you to import all your eBay data, your Poshmark data, helps you set up a Schedule C in order to submit your taxes. All you have to do is, it's not like 100% it takes care of everything. You still need to go to a tax person, or you have to figure out what you have to do. But all the data and all the items are there, so you're not stressing out, trying to go through your eBay records and everything. It takes care of that for you. So if you haven't checked out My Reseller Genie, check out My Reseller Genie. Use our code Pure Hustle, 15% off the first month. All right, so this next one is what I've been using a lot. So right now I'm also traveling as part of my new venture in life, and sometimes I've had to pause my eBay store. But I haven't paused the selling. I've just put it on vacation mode where I can still sell things, and I still get sales. Like, I'm still making money, and it's been great. And I can pause it for a while and I can bring it back up. Or let's say you want to go long term. Let's say you're kind of just done with reselling for a few months. You're like, oh, I'm kind of burnt out and I want to take a break, and you have a job that already pays all your bills. You can do that, because the beauty of it is your store is still there. Yeah, you're going to have to do some work to kind of waken up your store, but you can still source. You can still find the data. You can still research. It's not something that, hey, if you walk away, there's no going back to it. You can always go back to reselling. We've seen it all the time. I love it when I see it on YouTube or social media. Someone's like, hey, by the way, I stopped selling on eBay a few years ago, but I've come back and it's been profitable, and I definitely want to get back into the scene. And it's one of the things about I love reselling, that there is no finality to it. You can continue it or you can stop it whenever you want.
Yeah, no, that's huge. And that kind of leads into the next part, which is not only can you pause for short periods of time, like you said, where you're maybe just extending your handling time or doing some vacation modes, but you could still be getting sales. And so sales happen at any point, right? Like, there's nothing better than waking up in the morning. Like, that's the best. It's great when you're in the middtle of a day and all of a sudden you get the cha-ching and you're good to go and you're like, yes. But when you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh, I don't really want to get up, and then you see like a $200 sale and you're like, yes, right? You're just excited. And so sales happen whether or not you're working or you're not working. And it can feel like, it's not passive income. The reality is, like, it is not passive income because you've already put in that work. Yeah. But as you're seeing the fruition of that work come up, it's such a great thing that I can be working at my other job on the clock, making money, and then still making money reselling, seeing that eBay total go up. It's such a great feeling. And, it doesn't sleep. You can sleep, you can rest, you can take some time off, but the eBay machine is just going to keep rolling. And if you're willing to feed the beast, keep those listings in there, keep things going, sending those offers, man, you're going to be making sales all the time. It's a fantastic experience. And that's something that you really don't get doing other things, right? If you're not driving for Uber, if you're not at the plasma donation place actually doing the thing, you're not making money. Just is what it is.
I love waking up to sales. It's such a great feeling, right? Yes, you're right. It's not passive, but it does feel a little passive, right? Once you put in the work, and then out of nowhere you get a really nice sale, like a several $100 sale or $1,000 sale. You're like, wow, like, this is amazing, right? And you feel like you didn't really have to work for it. You did initially, right? You sourced it, you ended up listing it, but when it's been a moment, you kind of forgot about all that, and then you get that nice sale. You're like, yes, this is why I love eBay. All right. Hey, we're moving kind of quick today, but I'm ready to talk about some hustles of the week. Are you ready?
Oh, man, I'm always ready for our hustles of the week.
Come on,
so
in case you wonder what
hustle, go ahead.
It's the freaking hustle of the week.
So do you want to explain hustle of the week? Maybe we got new listeners that don't know what these are.
Yeah, the hustle of the week. So a lot of times, if you've been reselling for a while or you're brand new to reselling, you can get into phases where you feel like, am I making money? Is it working? I haven't had a big score in a while. And I always think back to our Richest Man in Babylon book review. I think that was the very first book review we did. And there was a whole section in there about luck not being a thing, but it's just opportunity comes, and are you ready to capitalize on it? And as resellers, the more consistent you are at garage sales, on Facebook Marketplace, doing the things you need to do to be sourcing, these huge hustles come. And sometimes it's a hustle that is, I mean, we call them hustles of the week because we're talking about them this week. But man, some of the hustles that our listeners send in of a huge find they have that can set them up for the rest of the year, right? We've gotten, $10, $20, $30, $40,000 sales that have come through because of deals people have made, buying a whole lot of things and then being able to sell them for insane amounts of money. And so these are just an encouragement to all of our listeners that it's out there. The opportunities are out there. And the only way that you're going to be able to capitalize on those opportunities is consistently being out there and working and grinding. And so we want to celebrate those. So if you are a listener and you haven't sent in a hustle of the week, please do so, because it really does help inspire the whole community. In fact, there was a long time where we had owned that hashtag back when hashtags were a thing, and people would just submit hustles of the week, and so you could use that, you could search that up, and you would find tons of Pure Hustle podcast listeners sending in, here are things that I've been able to pick up and sell, and it's just an encouragement to see that these sales do come through.
No, agreed, and they're also bolos, right? Let's be real. Not only are they hustle of the week, but they're also items to be on the lookout for.
All right.
So
our first
one.
Our first one comes from AKA 2KA from our Discord. So he says, here is a hustle of the week and a bolo to look out for, just like Orlando was talking about. These were in with some vintage toys, and I didn't even know they had any value. They're old Valentines and other greeting cards from the 1950s. I sold the lot for $235, and they sold in about a month. Man, I never even thought about old greeting cards. I mean, I've sold new packs of thank you cards or various types of greeting cards that hadn't been opened. And I know some people do really good with vintage postcards and things. But yeah, I can imagine that there's a market for old vintage greeting cards. That's pretty cool. I wonder how many. It says sold a lot for $235. I wonder what the number of greeting cards that was.
It's about 30 to 40 of them if you look at the image on the Discord. But, the reality is, I think it didn't really cost anything. That wasn't what the purchase was about. It was just kind of like a side thing, right? And it happens all the time to me too, where I'll pick up a bunch of toys, and then there's random stuff like Valentine's Day cards, or there may be some magazines. And you're like, oh, these aren't worth anything. You look them up, and there's some value. So, yeah, vintage Valentine's Day cards.
Speaking of which, I'm gonna pause for a second here to get your thoughts on something. Okay. This one's kind of interesting. My wife was telling me she saw some posts on social media that somebody had bought a couch or some kind of piece of furniture from a thrift store, and they got home, and then after a little while they discovered inside of it was some money or some jewelry or something. And so that person took it back to the thrift store, took the jewelry or the money, and said hey, this was in this thing. I wanted to bring it back. And everybody's comments was wow, it's good to know there's still good people out there. This obviously isn't trouble here. This obviously isn't that case, right? I've done the same thing where you buy a lot of things, they're intentionally selling this stuff. But yeah, even going along with some of the extras in with the lot you're buying, sometimes there are hidden things you didn't even know when you bought it, and you're like, oh man, inside this camera bag, inside this thing was a manual to this camera that sells for $40, and I didn't even know it was in there. They just sold me the bag. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
And I think we've addressed this before. I don't know what our previous response was, but to me is if it's something that is obviously an item that they clearly would not have overlooked had they known about it, I would maybe return it, right? So let's say, especially
if it's a garage sale, right? That's a little different than a thrift store.
Yeah, a thrift store, I wouldn't go back.
Yeah. I mean, if it's a garage sale, if it's hey, someone's old wedding ring is in the back of a drawer, yeah, you take that back. I would too, yeah.
A thrift store, I wouldn't go back, because unless they have a record of what was dropped off, chances are it's not going to get back to its owner, right? I've had garage sales, this wasn't valuable, but I've had garage sales where I bought a camcorder, and in it there was a tape, and I saw a family Christmas, and I was like, oh man, they probably want this back, and I would go back and I'd give them back, and they're like, oh, thank you so much, but... or if it's a, stacks of cash, like I probably would go back, right? If it was stacks of cash. If it was, like you said, a wedding ring, like it was something that they clearly would not have. Now, if it's something that's valuable, that was in the lot of stuff, right? That's it's clearly something they could have done some research or they could have looked at. I won't return that. Like that happens all the time where, especially when I would say in all of it, it's with vintage toys. Like I'll pick up a huge lot, I'll clean out an estate and I'll have, I don't know, like 20 boxes of vintage toys. And in it, I find like one toy that's worth $500, but every other toy was worth like, 30 to 40, maybe $50. That one, I'm like, no, like that's not even if it wasn't part of the deal. I had mentioned 2 years ago, how somebody had sold me a bunch of items and then they gave me like a basket full of protest pins. And I thought they were worthless. They didn't think it was much value to it. And I let it sit in my garage for a few months. And then after a few months, I began researching it and I realized I probably had like $2,000 to $3,000 worth of protest pins on there, right? So to me, it's like, hey, they had the opportunity to research it, to look it up, and they just chose not to, right? Or, I don't know. It happens a lot, but I would say if it's something that they clearly would have not have given away, then I think it's the right thing to do, right? But if it's something that's expensive that they just chose to just throw in the pile, like they didn't care, right? And to them, they're not losing out, they're not missing out, right? Unless you bring up to their attention. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on what I'm saying, Mike?
No, I think that's the spot on response there.
Let us know in the comments.
I think we all have heart, but some people will take it too far, right? So yeah. All right. I think you got our next hustle of the week.
Yeah, I do. So this comes from Death Pile Dave. I think this is the second one, hustle of the week, from our Discord. I went to a thrift store and came across a Masters flag that was autographed. Okay, so in case you're wondering what I mean by Masters flag, so if there's a Masters tournament, the golf tournament that happens in Augusta, Georgia all the time. And I got to tell you, there's a lot of good things that you can pick up that you can sell for a lot of money. I've sold a Masters jacket before for $500. I've sold several hats. Now, you got to be careful because like the hats, you think they're valuable, but sometimes they only go for like $20. Maybe you'll get $50, but there's a lot of items that are hard to come by. And this was one of those items that was hard to come by, especially because of autographs. So found a flag. It was kind of like this faux flag that was autographed. Picked it up for $29.99. Decided to list high. Sold a Fred Couples autographed 2006 Masters golf flag for $349.99. Right. Nice. That is a score. You recognize it. You saw the autograph. You knew it was Masters. Nice work there, Death Pile Dave.
I love that. All right. Our next one comes from Wayne. I'm going to mess this handle up at WLEWIS Bail Bond on Instagram. Says, hey guys, just wanted to share my reselling experience with you guys. I've learned a lot from listening to you. I found 3 Duracool control milk coolers. It's a small milk cooler that attaches to expensive espresso machines. They were new in box at the store that shall not be named, dun dun dun, for $20 each. Plus, I had a 25% off coupon, so I paid $15 each. I sold all 3 of them within 60 days for over $200 a piece. My best hustle to date in the last 2 years that I've been reselling. Thanks for what you guys do. Keep up the great content. Man, I love that. I love, we've talked in the past about, espresso machines or even like Starbucks machines, how even the various components of it can be valuable. But yeah, when you can get a new in box, something like that, that is fantastic.
No, agreed. And again, it's one of those things where this probably took some work, right? It took some research. It probably took some work to figure out, what were the key words and all. But in the end, it paid off, right? It ended up working out. So, hey, before Mike and I share our hustle of the week, you might be wondering, okay, what about this Discord? So if you haven't jumped on our Discord yet, the way to do it is by supporting us on Patreon. The reason that we're able to have 443 free episodes is because of our awesome supporters that every month support us on Patreon. If you want to know how to do that, go to patreon.com/PureHustlePodcast or go to the link below. And for $5.55 a month, you get to support us and you get access to the Discord. The Discord has all kinds of different resellers, from vintage books to vintage clothing to retail arbitrage to Amazon sellers. We got some really great Amazon sellers on there right now. And I keep going like, maybe I need to go back to Amazon. But if you want to join our Discord, please do so. Also, some of you have contacted us via social media. If you haven't yet, you can follow us we are Pure Hustle Podcast on all platforms, except we are Pure Hustle Cast on X. If you're listening to a podcast and you haven't come on over to the YouTube side, come on over. You don't have to watch all our episodes, but at least hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification, and make sure to click on that like button so it throws out our episode into. And we actually, our last episode didn't do so bad. It's kind of kind of interesting. Maybe it's because we were exposing fake resellers.
Yeah, I think we need to jump on that. I think we need to actually call them out. Let's do a whole episode where we show them on the screen. We show these TikTok fake resellers.
Do some journalistic moves here. Okay.
Let's do it, man.
All right. Hey, also want to let everyone know, if you ever want to shoot us an email, give us your hustle of the week, or ask a question, go to purehustlepodcast@gmail.com. That's purehustlepodcast@gmail.com. And as always, appreciate all of you that leave us iTunes reviews. It definitely helps us out all the time, especially when you leave the 5 stars and then you tell people why you listen to the podcast. So then people understand like, hey, it's worth my time being on here. We are the most reviewed, most listened to reselling podcast out there. And it's because of all of you that listen and also leave us reviews. And so people know why they should tune in. So thank you, everyone. All right. What is your hustle of the week?
Man, I don't have a huge one like we just read, but I did have, and this kind of ties into what we said at the beginning of the podcast. I sold a Banana Republic girls blazer jacket. And I've talked in the past about some of the old school mall brands are actually, they're still very valuable because a lot of people bought them at the time. A lot of these stores aren't around anymore, or they have a style of an outfit, especially if it's something like that, where it's like a jacket, a blazer, a nicer piece of clothing, and theirs get stained, ruined. They want a replacement, and you can't just go to the store and get them. And to be honest, a lot of stores now that are selling items, I mean, it's called fast fashion for a reason, is a lot of the items people are buying today costs about what you can get some higher quality stuff on eBay, but it's only going to last you a little while. Now, I'm not saying Banana Republic, some like Bolo brand, but I was able to sell this it was $30 plus shipping. I probably paid a couple of bucks for it at a garage sale. And again, that's not something I have a huge passion for. I'm not like, man, I'm just so inspired. Like every day that I get to sell a piece of woman's clothing, I'm like, this is my dream. It's like, no, but it's money, right? And so just thinking of the huge ROI from like $2 to $30 plus shipping, it's those things stack up over time, and that's what makes reselling keep going.
No, I agree. And and the thing is, there's so many different items, right, that you could end up like, you never know you're gonna score. So I didn't have a big one because I didn't want to share a big one this time. I wanted to share one. There's sometimes things that I'm proud about because I'm like, hey, I put in the work, I did the research. And so when I went to the thrift, I end up, sometimes there's like these bags that have a bunch of plush like pushed into the bag and like vacuum sealed. It's like $6, right, for the bag. And sometimes I pick them up, and I've scored on those because I think about like, hey, if I can sell one of these for $25, everything else would be gravy, right? So I ended up picking up a bunch of them. One of them that I picked up, one of these plushes, was a New Tag's lovely chicken fat dun plush doll, Daisy Chick. It was about 8 inches. Okay, it's just a chicken. It's just a chicken. That's all. I don't even know why it's so collectible, right? So
hey, it's Easter, right? I mean, it makes sense that chicken plush would be selling.
I guess so. I mean, I only paid $4 for the bag, so I want to say I paid less than $1 for it, but it's sold for $45 plus ship. And it's no matter how long you've been reselling, sometimes when you sell things, you're like, I cannot believe like that sold for that much, right? And it just motivates you. It actually, what I love about it is it validates you, right? Because I researched it. I was like, hey, people are paying $40 or $50. I'll never forget the plush I talked about, I don't know, 30 episodes ago. I remember I told you about that Top Ramen plush. It was kind of like, it was a square pillow and it was top ramen. And you know where I saw that the other day? I was at Dave & Buster's with my son, and it's one of the prizes that you can win with tickets. So I guess somebody didn't want to go about winning the tickets. I don't know. They just bought it on eBay.
I mean, you can spend $800 at Dave & Buster's playing some games to potentially get that. And some kid probably fell in love with it while they were there. And the parent was like, I could get this cheaper. eBay.
I know.
Hey, maybe that's how we can get some bolos. We should go check out what's for sale at those places.
And go source them. Yeah, I thought it was just pretty wild. I mean, I was very happy with this one. I also sold a bunch of Pokemon plush. That's another bolo. They're not all the same. Here's what I'll tell you. Here's how to differentiate what is valuable, what is not. This isn't 100% foolproof, but one of the signs is things that you can win it like at a carnival, or like at a theme park. Like those aren't very valuable. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, let's say you get a Pokemon plush and you can tell that it's a carnival or a theme park because it's not soft. You know what I'm saying? It's like filled with that, I don't know what it is, that white, like, I don't know what they call, like styrofoam or whatever. Like it just feels janky. I don't know if that makes sense. Or if it's a real plush, like, it's soft and it's squishable. Like that's how you can tell. I know that gets very technical, but I'm telling you, I see people all the time. I'll be sourcing and I'll see people going, oh, look at this plush. And they pick it up because it's Pokemon or just because it's, I don't know, Toy Story or something, but they don't realize like that's a carnival or that's a theme park one. People don't really care for that one. But if you find a Disney store one or you find something that's tied to a brand and because it's better quality, those are the ones that you want to pick up. So that is our hustles of the week.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll do this one right here. Why do I think reselling on eBay or on Amazon or Poshmark or Depop is one of the most flexible? Is because it can suit your lifestyle, right? Whatever that lifestyle may be, right? You may be, a young mom that has 2 or 3 little ones in your house and you're like, oh, I can't, it's tough for me to get a full-time job right now, or I don't want to do certain things, but hey, you could source at home, right? You could list at home. Right, you can ship out at home, or maybe you're you have different circumstances that only allow you to work certain hours, maybe. Or maybe, we have people all the time that have like serve time and they have a hard time getting a job, but they've been able to build their eBay store. We have people that are disabled that listen to the podcast, or maybe they're taking care of their mom or their dad and they're getting up in age and they can't really leave the home, but reselling allows them to continue to make that money, whether it be that they source on eBay or they source on Poshmark and sell on eBay, or, they have set schedules, they hit the thrift or they hit garage sales, and then the rest of the time they're at home making sure they're putting together those listings. But the beauty of it is that it can fit any lifestyle, right? You can be that young guy that hustles 24/7. You can scale your store easily to 6-7 figures, or you can be that older person that you're retired. You only want to make so much more money, but you want to supplement your income. You can do that with eBay reselling. And so I really do love how reselling allows you to fit into any lifestyle or phase that you're in.
Yeah, and kind of going along with that idea of fitting any lifestyle is, you have this ability to focus in on certain seasons, right? Like I know some people who they do reselling, and I mean, Q4 is obviously the time for us, and they really get most of their sales in Q4, and then they can kind of take it easy the rest of the year. You can really focus in on the times of the year that make sense for you. I mean, I'm a teacher, and so I have the summer off, and so I really ramp up reselling in the summer, and then during the school year, I pull it back a little bit, right? So you have a lot of flexibility in being able to focus in on the seasons that work for you, and it can be like seasonal, like specifically, like I'm more of a winter reseller, or in the summer because of the time that I have available, or it could just be a season of your life where you're like, hey, this is a time in my life where I'm not really busy doing other things, or I need to make that extra money. Like Orlando was saying, with like fitting a lifestyle or phase that you're in, is you can really narrow in and say like, hey, I need to pay off this credit card. I want to go on vacation. I want to buy a house, and you can up your reselling to focus in on that specific, goal that you have.
No, agreed. And I got to tell you, like now that I'm, in education and I'm reselling, there's going to be moments where I will ramp it up. Like Thanksgiving, I will ramp up the reselling, right? Because I know Q4 is around the corner, right? I know that Christmas, right? If I can find some time to resell, I'm going to ramp it up a little bit if I can. But the beauty of it is, let's say you're a teacher that you're just trying to make a little bit of extra money. Like, you can really hone in the summer, right? You can do a ton of sourcing in the summer, and you can start listing that stuff for Q4, right? So there's different ways, or you can, if you want to source for maybe a certain sports season, right? You want to source gloves or bats, you want to make a killing, like, you can do that. There's people all the time in our Discord, right, that they source for certain seasons and they're able to ramp it up. And how many hustles are there where you can do that? Like, you can find different pockets that you can hustle a little bit more and make a little bit more money, and definitely love that part of reselling. So this next one, I don't know. I'm kind of like, is this a good thing or a bad thing, right? And it's the idea that it's so flexible, reselling, and one of the reasons it is flexible is because you have no boss, right? You're your own boss, right? The way that you're reselling goes is very dependent on you. Now, for some of you, that may doom you, right? That may be the end of you, right? And I hate using this word, but if you don't have discipline, like, you're not going to be out there sourcing when you should be. You're not going to be listing when you should be. You're not going to be shipping on time. And so there is a detriment to not having a source. But the nice thing about it is that I believe there's like a sense of value. Like, hey, I worked hard for this. I source this. It's helping my family directly. I'm not giving into this, job machine that I'm disposable at and no one really cares about. Like, you're actually bringing back value back to your family. That's very important. On top of that, you're also thinking of the fact that, hey, you know what? You can choose to leave everything and go to your kid's ball game. You can choose to leave everything and go on a date with your spouse. You can choose to do whatever you want, and you're not held to the 9-to-5 schedule. And so I know if you're part-time, that's kind of hard, but if you're full-time, there's definitely that freedom. But even if you're part-time, there's that freedom. Like, after school or on the weekends, like, you're going to still be making that money because of the work you put in. So you're able to do those things. That makes sense, Mike?
Yeah, no, it does. And going back with that idea of not having a boss, and we do have clients in a sense, not really, but, we have customers. But I think one thing that you touched on was, for some people that's actually a bad thing, right? Like, some people actually need to have structured instructions, do this, do that. And I don't remember where I heard the quote, but it was such a good one. And it was essentially like, you almost have to treat yourself as two separate people. Like, I mean, not in a weird way, but like in a way of like, there's the general and then there's the soldier, right? Or there's the boss and then there's the worker. And you sometimes have to have a meeting. Like, the boss needs to take over for a period of time. And like, I did this at the beginning of the year, right? I put on the boss hat of like, I don't care what lazy Mike thinks at the moment. What is going to be best for my family? Here are the goals that I have. Here's what I need to achieve. Here's what I need to do it. I set out the to-do list. I set out the agenda. I made the mission statement. We're ready to go. And so now I'm treating that as like, that is the directive from the boss, right? And so now whenever I get those times where I want to be lazy and I don't want to get those listings done, I don't want to, do the extra work that I need to do, I don't want to go out sourcing, it's a realization that, hey, yeah, I don't technically have a boss, but I made a deal with myself when I was in my right mind that I need to do this in order to achieve what I want to achieve. Therefore, I'm still going to treat it as if this is my directive from a boss and I've got to achieve these things. And so that has kind of helped in my mindset. Once I kind of took on that paradigm of, you got to be both the general and the soldier. And when the general makes the command, you figured out what's best. Then when you're in that worker or soldier mode, it's just it's get that work done. And so if you're the kind of person who's really struggling with, you can't stay scheduled, you can't stay focused, you're not getting your listings done, you tell yourself you need 30 listings a week and you're only getting 5 done, you might need to have one of those moments where you say, okay, what are my goals and am I achieving them? If not, then I am failing my boss, which is either me, my own goals, or like what I'm trying to do for my family. And so that can be helpful too, but it is nice that a lot of times people deal with unreasonable bosses, right? Like, you deal with a boss who has expectations that aren't reasonable. They don't understand the day to day. They don't understand what's really going on in the trenches. Whereas we have the benefit of, we actually do understand what's reasonable and what we go through. And so we're not getting some random, change of directive. Like, now this is what you're going to do. Even though you're like, this is stupid, it's not going to work. You're only going to do the things that work because you understand the process. And so we still get the benefit, even if we don't have, ourself as like a real boss. Like if you treat yourself like a boss, it's like having the best boss you could have.
Yeah, no, agreed. And that's true. That is very true, right? And I guess you can reward yourself, right? Give yourself a bonus. So, okay.
That's right.
Now,
that's right. Get the bonus. Yeah. And the next one here kind of goes with, I think Orlando and I are like a perfect example of this. I mean, for most of the Pure Hustle podcast's history, I was part-time, Orlando was full-time. Orlando has moved a little bit more to part-time, but you're still you're still pulling in full-time numbers reselling, like that's what I want people to realize. You're just doing it less of your day-to-day life. But there's another aspect too, which is family involvement. And so, from day one with reselling for me, I guess I can't say day one. It took a few weeks before my wife understood why we needed to keep taking more and more of the garage for reselling. Yeah. But once she started seeing the sales come in, it was like she was on board. I mean, she was going sourcing with me. She jumped right in with like shipping. She's really type A, and so she's really good with, like, let's get these organized, put in these bins, and this will make it easier for pulling items. And let's, once I'd figured out the custom SKU thing, she helps me keep track of all of that. So she does a lot of the listing, not really listing, some listing, but mostly like shipping. She's really, really good at that stuff, getting things out on time. And will go sourcing with me. If we're on a family vacation, it's like, hey, let's stop at a thrift store. And so I have that family hustle, and it's great even seeing my kids involved. Like they're carrying items. My oldest son is to the point now where he likes to go to garage sales with me. And I know you've gone with your kids a lot too, but we've also heard from a ton of listeners that it's like, I wish I could get my wife or my girlfriend or my boyfriend or my husband or whatever on board. But you don't need to, right? Like it is okay. Like if this is my thing. I have a whole lot of things in my life that it was like, man, I wish my wife would liked these kinds of movies or like to play these kinds of board games, but she doesn't. Those are my things. She has her things. And so that's okay too, is if this is like, hey, this is my solo hustle and I am married and I do this on my own, or I'm a single person and I'm doing this in order to pay bills. You can do it either way. And there's tons of benefits bringing in other people to help. There's also benefits of being fully in charge and you're not having to answer to somebody else and other ways of doing things. And so reselling is one of the few hustles that you can do that. I mean, I've heard of a few people who, have, after they've retired, one of them became a truck driver and the spouse like travels with them or something like that. But there's not a lot of side hustles where it's like, hey, I'm going to go do Uber. Do you want to drive with me in the passenger seat? You're not going to make any more money doing that. You can't make more money bringing somebody along or something like that. But if with reselling, hey, let's go to a thrift store. You hit those aisles, I hit these aisles, and then she comes back with a cart full of stuff that I would have never picked up, and it's profitable. So it really does allow you to scale or to bring in family if you would like to.
No, agreed. And, I think about my own family. My son decided to do that to help pay for his college. And, it wasn't as lucrative as he wanted it to be, but he also didn't put in the work. But he still was able to pay for his textbooks. He was able to pay for the stuff that he needed. And so it's great because once you learn it, you can share with other family members, right? And they can decide to pick it up. But like you said, you don't need it either, right? You can actually do this on your own if you choose to do this on your own. So I don't know. I do love the family involvement. I think it's always great. What it does, it also brings unity, right? It bonds you together, right? You celebrate the wins together. You learn together. I just think it's a great avenue to do that with reselling. All right. So our last one here. Okay. And I always wonder about sharing the last one because I wonder where this is going to go. But what I love about reselling is it stacks with other hustles. And what I mean by that is like, you don't have to just be an eBay reseller, right? I would say Mike and I are an example of that because we have the podcast, right? We decided to do reselling and then we started to do the podcast. Now, we don't make a ton of money on the podcast, but it does help a little bit. It helps us, first of all, pay the bills so we can continue doing the podcast. But, there's a little bit of income. There's other people that have made a killing and have 100K plus subscribers. So there's one aspect of it. It also ends up allowing you to learn how to negotiate with people. Right, you're able to make deals. You learn how to work with a spreadsheet if you're trying to keep track of your expenses. I mean, there's just a lot of things that you can stack. And I know Mike over the last few years, he's actually tried a lot of different hustles while reselling, right? And some of them came from reselling, because what reselling does, I think, is expands your mind. It shows you that there's other ways to make money, that you don't have to be trapped into a 9 to 5, that you can actually make that side income. You don't necessarily have to get another job. You can just go sourcing during that time, and you can go listing, you can pack items. And so it's kind of nice how you don't have to necessarily give up reselling to be successful in another hustle. You can actually continue reselling. Just you got to make sure you follow all the things, make sure you're sourcing things correctly, make sure that you are shipping out on time, all those things. But it also gives you the opportunity to spend time doing other things, right? Whether it be building a brand, whether it be, document. I mean, you could just document your stuff, and not saying you're going to be like a major YouTuber and get a bunch of subs, but the reality is there's a lot of resellers out there. All they did is document, and they end up taking off, and they ended up with another lucrative side hustle. So can you think of other hustles, Mike? I'm putting you on the spot that you could stack with this. Pretty much anything, right?
Yeah, gosh, there's so many hustles out there that it's hard to say. But yeah, I mean, I'll just throw a random one out, like power washing, right? That was the thing for a while, like people showing on TikTok, like you can go to a store and buy a power washer and, power wash people's driveways. I mean, if that was your thing, like, or mowing lawns, like you decided you were going to do that as a side hustle, there's nothing stopping you from, hey, I don't have a client coming up, I'm going to stop at a thrift store. Or, hey, there's a garage sale on my way to my next client, I'm going to stop by really quick. And so, yeah, it really is something that is just so flexible. You can fit in pretty much any lifestyle for sure.
Or maybe that, your eBay can fund your other side hustles, right? We've done that before. There was a time where I exclusively used eBay funds to fund my Amazon. Right now, it was both reselling, but what it did is it provided me a good amount of capital, and then I built the Amazon capital, and I made a lot of money on Amazon, and then I started funding the eBay side of it, right? So it could fund different things. Or maybe you're like, hey, I want to start like a sports academy or something, and you need the equipment or you need the license. You're like, how am I going to fund this other side hustle? Well, you can sell on eBay, right? You can eBay, not just eBay, but Poshmark, Depop, wherever. Reselling is a thing that I believe you can always keep as a side hustle for the rest of your life, and necessarily will not interfere. The most difficult aspect, I would say, is the shipping, because you have to ship during a certain time. But there are people all the time that tell us, hey, I only ship once or twice a week. It works with my schedule. I'm able to do it, and it's a good thing. So be aware that reselling is a very flexible side hustle because it can be stacked with many other side hustles. So there's a lot going on out there as far as reselling, and sometimes people get down on reselling and they're like, I don't know if we can do this. I'm not sure. But the thing is, like, it doesn't hurt to try, right? If you're brand new, it doesn't hurt to start reselling. If you've been reselling for a while and you're kind of like burnt down a little bit, you can stop it. You can move forward. You could do something else, or you can diversify. One thing we didn't talk about, and just want to add here real quick too, is the flexibility of reselling is that you can pivot when you want, right? If you get tired of a certain item, you're like, for example, myself, I got tired of selling clothes. I got tired of sourcing it. I got tired of taking pictures. I got tired of measuring. I got tired of returns, and I ended up moving over to toys. And guess what? Made the same amount of money, right? It was also had its own, plethora of things I didn't want to deal with, like, how you had to pack things really nice because it was more fragile than clothing, how you had to make sure that you definitely knew what you're picking up, because clothing, you have to know what you need to pick up, but I think it's a lot easier to learn than it is with certain collectibles, certain toys. So be aware, this was our bonus. This was number 11, the idea that, hey, it's so flexible that you can, in the end, right, pivot. You can do promoted listings. You can change to same day shipping. Whatever it takes to boost your business, you can definitely do that with reselling. All right, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Mike, you got anything else you want to add here?
No, I think that's good.
Okay, so hey, keep on reselling. Continue, making it happen whether you're part-time or full-time. Make sure to smash that like button if you enjoyed this episode. And if you're listening to a podcast, jump on over and leave us a podcast review. Grateful for everyone. And as always, make sure to be real.
Be relevant.
And be reselling. Leads.
Peace.
From garage sales to thrift store aisles, we hunt for treasure, stacking them in piles. Hustling hard, making deals all day, flipping finds, Make your hustle